Guys, the fantasy football players are here. And if you're anything like me, like my subscribers, I'm hearing things, I'm seeing things where there's some players who have not been performing how we need them to. Are they going to turn it around? Are they going to win leagues in the fantasy football playoffs beginning in week 15? Let's take a look at last year. Who were some of these players, okay? There's two really that stick out to me right away. Now, this is last year, weeks 1 through 14, in terms of total fantasy points scored. And look at these names. Obviously, Jamar, JJ, Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, right? They were all crushing it, right? Until the fantasy playoffs. A lot of them continued to be great, but some names down here, right? For example, Mike Evans, all the way down here at wide receiver 30, did his thing where he missed a couple games, did his thing where he scored 20 points or under 5 points, right? Came back after the bye week, he had 9 points. He had a nice 20-point game, but then he had 9 points again. All in all, wide receiver 30 in total points, right? So keep Mike Evans in mind. We look at the running back position, guys, in a similar fashion. All right, our leaders heading into playoffs last year, Saquon, Henry, Bijan, Jameer, a lot of them finished strong. But who are some names? Who's a guy who wasn't doing so well? Right here jumps off the page to me, RB25, Jonathan Taylor, averaging a measly 13.5 points per game. RB25 missed 3 games. Here, 1, 2, 3 games of his most recent to the point, 5 or 6 games under 10 points. So JT was not crushing. Only had 1 game over 20 fantasy points before the playoffs. But now, let us fast forward to the playoffs, see how these guys kind of finished up. All right, and we'll go with Mike Evans first. You remember he was like wide receiver 25, wide receiver 30, whatever it was. Where is he now? Wide receiver 3, dropping 32 points. Then again, around 10, but then 26, right? This is a playoff league winner right here. 22.5 average points in the playoffs. As far as the running backs go, Jonathan Taylor, there was no better running back. 10 points in the first round, sure, but then 40, then 26. So the point of today's video is we are going to reveal some players who I think could turn it around. Not that they've been awful, unusable, right? They've shown potential, but it hasn't been a full season of greatness to this point. And I think in the fantasy football playoffs, we might get some greatness. And we are going to begin with Stephon Diggs. We're going to do wide receivers first and then position by position, look at some defense at the end, maybe even if we're lucky and we have time. But Stephon Diggs, the last 2 games here for Diggs, okay? Not great. We're looking at, where are we? 4 PPR points, 5.6 PPR points, only 50% of snaps. Very odd games, blowout games here. Very odd. We have the bye week in week 14. Dare I say he's 100% healthy. And, he's been healthy. Week 7 or 8 is really when we saw him kind of going full speed. But take a break. And what do we have? Week 15, revenge game against Buffalo at home. Against Buffalo last time. Here it is. 12 targets, 10 catches, 146 yards. Didn't score. I bet you he scores in week 15 at home against Buffalo. Then you have Baltimore and the Jets in terms of fantasy points allowed to opposing wide receivers. Baltimore is up here, 28.3. That's a top 10, top 12 matchup. The Jets are a little bit skewed on the entire season because you had Sauce Gardner for a while. But recently the Jets, they're down here at 22.9 points allowed. It's bottom third, so a bottom third, not great matchup. The Jets are a good exploitable matchup for wide receivers. And then the Bills are just somewhere in the middle. But when you have Stephon Diggs in its revenge game, I'm sure Cardi B's in attendance at Gillette Stadium, right? It's going to be crazy. So Diggs there. Then at Baltimore, that point total is going to be insane with Baltimore in a must-win scenario. And then the Jets should be easy peasy, okay? Next receiver, it's my guy. It's Justin Jefferson. And really what we are on watch for is we are on watch for the Dallas matchup in playoffs. Okay, so Dallas, looking at this chart, guys, 34.1 fantasy points per game allowed to opposing wide receivers. It's the most in the league. The Lions are at 32.5. The Bears are at 31.4. And then the Giants, 30.6. Justin Jefferson has 3 of those best 4 matchups in the next 3 games. Dallas in week 15. 34.1 points per game. Giants in week 16, 30.6 points per game. Detroit in week 17, 32.5 points per game. His only touchdown with JJ McCarthy came against Detroit. Now, I want to give you the best case scenario for what is occurring. Okay, I'm going to, and this is me doing this knowingly. Here is the excuse-based reasoning. Okay, here it is. So, JJ McCarthy, as to why JJ and Justin Jefferson have not been working. Okay, here we have it. Week 10 against Baltimore. You had 12 targets. We love that. We'll take 12 Justin Jefferson targets any day of the week. Played Baltimore. They shut him down. Got a little unlucky. Sounds good. Week 11, Chicago at home. 9 targets. We'll take that too. If you remember in this game, there were multiple deep throws that Justin Jefferson actually, he fell down. He didn't go up for the ball. The effort was lacking. Were they perfect throws? No, but I'm just making the excuse space, right? Okay. The excuse case here for Justin Jefferson. Then in week 12, you're at Green Bay. Yeah, you're not winning. Yeah, we're not, JJ McCarthy in that matchup with Micah Parsons in his face all game. No. Then we had Brosmer in week 13. So that's Brosmer. Then in week 14, admittedly, this was a bit concerning because you had the Washington defense. I think the game was 30-0. And it was just nonstop TJ Hawkinson. But JJ McCarthy looked good. It gives me hope for week 15 against Dallas. It's the worst defense in the league right now for wide receivers. If McCarthy looked terrible in week 14, right, I'd be concerned, but he looked good because that's the first good matchup, if you will, of his time, all right, so far this season. The game was so out of hand. JJ barely played the fourth quarter, only 80% of snaps, 4 targets, whatever, okay? That is the best case scenario. Now, the worst case scenario is that McCarthy is terrible. Justin Jefferson is not inclined to try his hardest right now. Right? These are things that, and I'm not saying McCarthy's good, but if he can be good in good matchups, that's really all we care about, okay? Don't get me wrong, bottom 5 QB in the league, for sure. But Dallas opens these doors, so we are on Dallas watch. The matchups are insane. 3 of the best 4 matchups for Jefferson. I think he turns it around, guys. I really do, and I'm fine going out on that limb. Continuing with Dallas watch, we have Ladd McConkey and the Chargers wide receivers. Now, looking at the playoffs, you have KC, Dallas, and Houston. I mean, 2 of those matchups are bad, very bad. But Dallas in week 16, same thing goes for Quentin Johnson. I think you could flex him in week 16. You could flex Keenan Allen. You got to be all over these Chargers in week 16. Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel, they are also on Dallas watch. Now, if Mariota is QB in week 15, I actually like that a bit more than if it was Daniels. I think Daniels just needs to take a second, take a break. He's clearly not healthy. Hopefully they hold him out. Hopefully, not for the player, but for our purposes, they just hold him for the season because there's no need. They're like 3-10. They don't need to play Daniels right now. The Philly matchup in week 16, I don't love that. It is at home though. But weeks 15 and 17 for these Commanders receivers, this is very interesting, guys. So keep an eye on them. And then finally, AJ Brown has been a monster lately, and there's a couple good matchups here. Week 15 against Vegas, he should dominate. And then week 17 at Washington. Washington is a great matchup, 29.3 fantasy points per game to the wide receiver position. He has 100 yards in 3 straight games. AJ Brown averaging 8 targets a game in that span. So I'm in on AJ Brown. Okay. Let's move on now to the running back position. And I want to start here with Derrick Henry, with King Henry. Now let's take a look at the fantasy points allowed to the running back position. Derrick Henry, week 15, first round of the playoffs. Who do we get? Who is so lucky to try to tackle him? Trying to zoom out here. Hold on. Yes, at the Bengals. And we saw in week 13, they were blown out by the Bengals. So Henry did not have the game script that we wanted. With that being said, still got in the end zone, still 6 a carry. Caught a pass for 44 yards, it seems. I missed that play. But still, on 40% of snaps versus the Bengals in week 13, 17.4 fantasy points. It's pretty awesome. What if that number hits 60%? He probably scores again. We're probably pushing 30 points this week if the game script is even somewhat good against the Bengals, who are allowing a league most 28.2 fantasy points per game. Then you go to New England, at New England, week 16. That game should be close again. If the Ravens decide to show up, it should be a high over-under. If the Ravens go ahead and score, the Patriots should be able to go and score. Okay, I know that the Patriots defense is kind of lauded as this good run defense. I'm not falling for it, dude. The only reason that shows up on paper is because they're blowing teams out. Their pass defense is actually pretty good. And then teams are not going to get back into it with the run. If these games are close, somewhat close, which New England at the Ravens could be in week 16, I think you can dominate them on the ground if your name's Derrick Henry. So I really like Henry's playoff schedule. At Green Bay in week 17 is not amazing, though. Devon Achane, Jalen Wright, Ollie Gordon, whoever it is, this schedule is out of control. You have Pittsburgh in week 15. They're pretty good, but if it's Achane, around the outside, things like that, it's high scoring. Now the Steelers are kind of putting up points. It should be a pretty good matchup. Okay? Pittsburgh, I don't worry about it too much. And then you have Cincinnati and Tampa Bay. We know about the Cincinnati matchup, and then Tampa Bay is right here, averaging 21 and a half points to the running back position, 21.3. So they're top 10, top 12 matchup for running backs. So Achane should continue to cook. Even if he's a little banged up, put him in the lineup. The Cardinals running backs, guys, are very interesting to me. Now, I'm recording this video very early Wednesday morning. Apparently, by the end of the day, we will know if Trey Benson is being activated. I don't think he's going to be, but I'm not an expert. Hence, no expert fantasy football. Literally the name of my channel. Blows my mind when people try to tell me I'm an analyst and things like that. I'm literally just speaking into the void about football. But anyway, the Cardinals running backs after week 15, okay? Week 15 sucks. You have Houston. I would not play any of them. But these guys are all on waivers. I'm talking Michael Carter, Emari DeMercado, who's pictured here, and Bam Knight. Now, the way I envision this, right? You have Atlanta week 16, A+ matchup. Atlanta is god-awful. And then you have Cincinnati week 17. So we are on Bengals watch for the running back position. Atlanta at home, this is a great matchup for the Cardinals running backs. The way I envision this going is Bam Knight is the lead rusher. And then DeMercado, or if he's not healthy, Michael Carter, that is the pass-catching RB who will get a couple carries on the ground. The reason DeMercado is so interesting to me is because a lot of people, especially in PPR, a lot of people are going to go for Bam Knight. Fair enough. I prefer him. Think he's an RB2 if Benson misses, especially in these matchups, right? But DeMercado, guys, look at the yards per carry. 31 attempts this year. It's not a lot, but it's not nothing. 7.77 yards per carry, guys. It's insane. He's yet to score a rushing touchdown. He's got in the end zone through the air. 8 yards per catch. Every time he touches the ball, good things are happening. So he's going to be the secondary running back if Benson's out. Bam Knight's going to be leading it on the ground. All you need against Atlanta and against Cincinnati is like 10 opportunities a game to have value. So DeMercado is very interesting to me. I think he'll be coming back this week. If we find out he's like out, whatever, maybe put on IR, whatever, something catastrophic. Michael Carter's a must roster. You have Bam Knight and Michael Carter. But if DeMercado's healthy, the team likes him and they're going to give him the work through the air, give him the targets. You see here, weeks 10 and 11, 4 targets and 3 targets. He didn't even finish this game. Only played 18% of snaps. Already had 3 targets. All right. And now we've seen Michael Carter step in weeks 12 and 13. He's had like 6 targets a game. And then week 14, he had like 4 or something. I forget what it is. Let me just look at it. But yeah, that secondary role to Bam Knight, guys, is through the air. So yeah, week 12, week 12, only 3 targets. He had 7 the week before, filling in for DeMercado. Week 13, 6, and then last week, 4 targets. So like this is good in PPR. And then, you mix in 5 carries, 3 to 5 carries. Maybe that hits 8 carries, right? Maybe something happens to Bam Knight. Now you have value against Atlanta and Cincinnati in PPR. Really like that. Okay. Ashton Genty must be mentioned. The matchups are intriguing. So I want to take a look at Philly week 15. A lot of people view Philly as this monstrous run defense, this monstrous defense. Not exactly true. So CBS Sports, shout out CBS Sports here. Okay. On average, the Eagles are allowing over 100 rush yards per game. So that's like bottom 15, bottom 12. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's 13th most. But it's 100 yards a game. Okay? It's 100 yards a game, 4.3 a carry. It can get out of hand. We've seen some running backs, mainly Kyle Monangai, DeAndre Swift, dominate them. They each went over 100 on the Eagles. The only running back getting work in this offense for the Raiders is Genty. So if he gets every carry, 15 carries, dare I say 20 opportunities, he's probably going over 100 yards against the Eagles. So my point is, it's not an amazing matchup, right? They could easily game script out of it for Genty, but it could be worse. Now, Houston, week 16, that's one we don't like at all. 73 yards a game to running backs, it's bottom 5. We don't like that matchup. In PPR, you can play him because of the 7 targets per game since week 11. All right, but otherwise, maybe we're looking to sit in half PPR. And then in week 17, you get the Giants, 125 yards per game, second most in the league to running backs. All right, we look at the fantasy points allowed to the running back position. The Giants are allowing 26 fantasy points per game. So you could have a really nice stretch here where you get like a 20-point game in week 15 and then just a monster blow up in week 17 from Genty. Trevion Henderson must be mentioned, in my opinion. Buffalo, we'll go back to this chart. I think they're allowing a lot. Yeah, 108.7 yards per game. 2 running backs. That game's going to have a monster over-under. Same thing with the Baltimore matchup in week 16. We look at the Ravens. They're kind of more down here, 88.6 yards per game. But again, guys, target these high point total matchups. I imagine we're going to be pushing 50 points in the Vegas over-unders for these games, all right? And then the Jets, week 17, they should just dominate. So Trevion Henderson, bet on these rookies down the stretch. I like Henderson a lot. Good player, good team, high point totals, has shown flashes before. So we are in. Chase Brown must be mentioned as well as our final running back to mention. And he's just been dominating lately. Let's just take a look at fantasy football leaders. We will go back to 2025 here and see how he's been doing. Gee, since I don't know, let's just cut it. I mean, let's just use some of his bad games. Why don't we? Week 4, right? This is my guy coming into the season. So where is he? Chase Brown, RB 13. Okay, if we just go till after the bye, week 11 through 14, a nice sample size of 1 month, we are RB 7 for Chase Brown, 15.4 half PPR points. We change this to PPR. I'm sure he gets even better. RB 6, 17.6 PPR points for Chase Brown. So Baltimore, Miami, Arizona, all good matchups. Miami's like technically bad, but when you have Joe Burrow and the offense is working how it is, I don't worry even a little bit. At the QB position, Brock Purdy must be mentioned. So strength of schedule for QBs, guys. According to Fantasy Pros, Brock Purdy, 5-star schedule. According to Fantasy Pros, JJ McCarthy, Shedeur Sanders, Baker Mayfield, Tyler Shook are the other ones. I actually looked at their schedules. I didn't love most of it. Other than McCarthy, like his schedule is by far the best. We talked about it with Jefferson. Okay. But Brock Purdy's schedule, nuts. Tennessee, Indianapolis, Chicago. Indianapolis is in shambles. Tennessee, bottom 5 defense. Chicago, bottom 5 defense. Brock Purdy should bounce back. All the weapons are healthy. They had a week 14 bye. You have McCaffrey, Kittle, Jennings, Pearsall. Everyone is fully healthy. All right. Jackson Dart should be mentioned as well. Had a rough week 13, but the playoffs, guys. You have Washington. Let's just take a look at how they allow points here. Washington, 20.2 fantasy points per game to the QB position. That's 6th most. You have Minnesota. That's not a good matchup, but it could mean a lot of scrambles. He's at home. Could be somewhat high scoring. So I'm not entirely out. I'm maybe looking to stream a QB in week 16, but then you have Vegas in week 17. Again, with Max Crosby, it's going to be a lot of scrambles. Jackson Dart, that's his game. So scrambles are high fantasy point per play plays. All right. I don't know if that made any sense, but whatever. And then Jaden Daniels, keep an eye on him. I mentioned him before, whether it's Mariota or Daniels. We are on Dallas watch. Dallas allowing 24.5 fantasy points per game to opposing QBs, most in the league. He gets Dallas at home in week 17. If Daniels plays this week at the Giants, you can play him. If it's Mariota at the Giants week 15, you can play him. I like that. And then we're going to the tight end position. There's 4 guys I want to talk about. The first one is Isaiah Likely, because, man, these Cincinnati Bengals are the worst defense of all time, okay, factually, versus tight ends. 20.5 fantasy points per game to the tight end position. They just ignore the position. Last week, you had Dalton Kincaid and then the 3rd string tight end score touchdowns for the Bills versus the Bengals. Dawson Knox did not score, but he had like 100 yards. Guys, they combined for like 130 yards and 2 touchdowns on like 10 catches, the tight end position only. If you look at Josh Allen's production last week, it was all tight ends against the Bengals. In week 13, the Ravens played the Bengals. Andrews and Likely combined for over 23 fantasy points. So if you have Andrews, put him in. If you have Likely, he's available in 87% of leagues, right? Go get him. Play him versus the Bengals. You can flex him. You can run the 12 personnel. You have a Bowers. You have a good tight end. Put Likely in the flex, especially in PPR. 6+ targets in most recent 2 games. Darren Waller, we are also just still on Cincinnati watch. Now, they line Waller up kind of in like as a wide receiver. which for the Steelers, if we go to wide receiver fantasy points allowed, they are stinky. 29.5 allowed per game to wide receivers. I get he's a tight end, but the way they use him in the slot and things, he works there. All right. And then against tight ends here, Cincinnati again, week 16. And then you have Tampa Bay, who through the air, they're just not as good as they are on the ground. Trey McBride must be mentioned because, yes, week 17, my goodness gracious, at Cincinnati, he is going to single-handedly win leagues. I mean, he might drop 40 points. He really might drop 40 points. Absolutely insane. And then Fantasy Pros is telling me Jake Ferguson has a good schedule rest of season. I guess I think it's just like upper third schedule. Every one of these matchups, Minnesota, the Chargers, and Washington, are all pretty good matchups for tight ends. So he should be mentioned. He should still be in lineups, even with Lamb, Pickens, Flanoy, all these guys doing whatever they're doing. Put Ferguson in, guys. That's going to do it for these potential league winners for the playoffs. Good luck, fellas. See you next week. Good luck.